Hey everybody, Dockside Gamer here and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a different style of video for you, and honestly it's something that I didn't think I was actually going to do, but once I started writing, I figured out that I was kind of really into it. It's a tier list of the bosses in Dark Souls 1. Now, the way I'm going to work this tier out and how I went about choosing what bosses go to which tier and how I decided how I wanted to order them is based on three factors. The first factor is going to be the overall difficulty of the boss. How hard is the boss to kill? Movesets, everything like that. The second factor I'm going to take into account is the arena that the boss is in. Like, is there a lot of movement within the arena? Is the arena actively fighting against you? Are you going to get stuck on some things? Is it flat? Things like that. And then the third factor that I'm going to take into account is how new players might see the bosses, like how they will react to the new bosses, or how they'll do against the bosses. If that sounds good to you, let's get started. So the way that I'm planning to go through each boss is I went to Fextra and just typed in the game progress rate for Dark Souls 1, and I'm just going that way, like the quote-unquote intended way that the developers would have expected you to play the game. So starting off with the Asylum Demon. He's the very first boss of the game. He is the tutorial boss. Honestly, he has pretty low health, he doesn't output a lot of damage, and he is made specifically for a brand new player. His attacks are really telegraphed, they're really slow, easy for a player to dodge, and honestly, it's not that hard of a boss to defeat. Now, the arena that you're in is wide open. There's plenty of room for movement. You even have a spot where you can do an opening drop attack after you get all your gear, which does probably over a quarter of his health, maybe a third of his health. Honestly, new players would have no problem fighting the Asylum Demon, and that was the point of the Asylum Demon. Give the players a way to experience the game, get used to the controls and the attacks. So, with that being said, I'm going to put him in the E tier, where honestly, if you're brand new to Dark Souls and you haven't played these kind of games before, the Asylum Demon might cause a few issues, especially if you're not used to playing the game yet. Moving on, we have the Taurus Demon, another early game boss. He doesn't really have a whole lot of health, and he does a little bit more damage than the Asylum Demon, and honestly his attacks are pretty well telegraphed, giving you plenty of time to dodge, and you can literally create space against the Taurus Demon just by walking backwards. So if you're doing a range build, just walk backwards, you'll always create space. Now, the arena itself is a narrow bridge with two towers on either side. The Taurus Demon obviously jumps down from the far tower, and you come out from the closer tower. Now, when you come into this arena, there's a ladder right behind you where you can go up and kill two hollow crossbowmen, and now you have a spot to do a drop attack. Kind of the same way as against the Asylum Demon, so honestly the arena is helping you. But when it comes to the narrow bridge, there is a couple spots where you could possibly roll off if you panic a little, so that might hinder you. Now, new players, I know when I was first starting out, the Taurus Demon did give me a little bit of trouble, just because I was still getting used to the game. I haven't really played anything like this before, but once I got going, it got a little bit easier, and honestly, I think new players would have the exact same kind of struggles. Getting used to rolling, getting used to blocking, stamina management. This is, again, kind of another tutorial boss where it's a little bit more forgiving. So with that being said, I'm going to place him just ahead of the Asylum Demon on the E tier. Next we have the Gargoyles. It's the first boss fight that introduces two enemies to fight. You start off fighting one of the Gargoyles, and when you get him down to half health, the second gargoyle drops down, introducing another mechanic along with it. and that's kind of learning how to create space and keeping two enemies within frame at the same time so you don't get hit from behind by one of the bosses. Now, the second gargoyle pretty much only spews fire. He uses melee attacks very rarely, I've found, if at all. So the fire is kind of there to keep you off balance, trying to create that space where you don't get hit by the fire, but you're also trying to dodge the first gargoyle's attacks. Now, this can be pretty intimidating to start, especially if you don't know how to properly dodge or how to keep the space between you and the second gargoyle while dodging the first gargoyle. It can just create a lot of chaos. Now, the arena itself is pretty open. It gives you a fair amount of space to roll around, to create that space that you need, and honestly, it's on top of a cathedral that you've been working your way through this entire time. And it gives you a great aesthetic when you're thinking about it. You're on top of a cathedral fighting two gargoyles out of nowhere. Just like the general look of it is amazing. Now you can get distracted and roll off the side of the cathedral, and that is also something that could happen to new players. And also, speaking of new players, they may have a hard time fighting this boss. It's kind of a final test after fighting Taurus Demon, after fighting Asylum Demon, fighting through all the enemies through the area. This is like a brand new test. New players may get stuck here for a little bit while they learn how to create that space between the second gargoyle and learning how to dodge the first gargoyle melee attacks. It took me quite a while when I first started playing, so don't feel bad if it does for you. Now, with saying that, I'm going to put the gargoyles in the C tier. They're fairly difficult, but once you learn their patterns, they can be pretty easy to fight. It's just early game, they are a difficult boss. Moving on, we have Capra Demon, who overall isn't that difficult of a boss. His attacks, again, are pretty well telegraphed, pretty slow, giving you plenty of time to move. The only difficult part is the small arena that you're going to be fighting in, and I'll get to that in a second, and the two dogs that immediately rush you when you enter that fog wall. It kind of gives you a taste of how unfair Dark Souls can be at times. These dogs can stun lock you, they do bleed, and then Capra Demon can hit you while you're being stun locked, and you could die within seconds of starting this boss fight. The arena, like I said, is extremely small. It makes movement and dodging fairly difficult. With the dogs rushing you, like I said, you could immediately die, almost the second you step into this fog wall. Which, saying that, that's how new players mostly quit this game when they start. They get to the Capra Demon where they haven't had many problems up until now, and they just can't get past it. The small arena, the stun locking, and the massive damage that Capra can deal out when you're stun locked, it can be overwhelming for some new players. With that being said though, if the dogs weren't in that boss fight and you're just fighting Capra Demon alone, which you do fight Capra Demon later on in just an open area, and you can take him out really easily, he's not that hard of a boss. If it's just him, he's not that difficult. So I'm going to put him in the D tier just because he himself isn't that difficult. The arena he's in makes him a lot more difficult for the part of the game you're actually in. Next on the list is Gaping Dragon. He's the first encounter with like a dragon type boss, and honestly his attacks as well as everything else up to this point can be fairly easily telegraphed and dodged, and honestly you can very easily get attacks off. He does his very slow movements, and he has a weak point on his head that he gives you plenty of time to attack when he slams his whole front body down with the charge. You get probably 3 or 4 swings in before you can actually just walk out of the way, and he goes running past you. Now, in saying that, he can spew out acid that will absolutely wreck your gear if you stand in it too. So that spreads out probably, it's a good wide ring around him, and it can kind of knock you off balance a bit. The arena itself, it's flat, there's not really much to say about it, like it's just a little bit of water and some broken pillars, but there's nothing to really get caught on. The only downside is the channeler that overlooks the whole thing. If you are able to kill that channeler before you get to the Gaping Dragon, then you have nothing to worry about, because that channeler can buff Gaping Dragon, which would make him a lot harder than he has to be. New players, they could get walled by this boss as well. I got walled by it when I first started, mostly because I didn't know about the channeler. I kind of skipped that part of the area, didn't kill the channeler, the Gaping Dragon got buffed, and I got demolished every single time. And I feel like new players who don't know necessarily where the channeler is could also feel the exact same way. Now, where I'm going to place the Gaping Dragon is also in the D tier. Now, that's just because once you have figured out his moveset, he's an easy boss. So honestly, there's not much to worry about here. Now, the next boss on my list is Quelaag, kind of the end of the early game bosses, and she can hit extremely hard with her sword, as well as some magic that she will kind of do like an AoE attack, as well as the lava that she'll spew out to cover around the arena. And if you're doing a pyro build whatsoever, she is completely immune to fire. So that kind of nullifies a whole school of magic, especially if you've been focusing mostly on pyro. Now, the arena itself, it's kind of a flat area. There's a lot of movement here. The only thing that would limit that is when she puts out her lava. And she puts out lava to cover a wide portion of the arena. And once you hit that lava, it can melt your health bar very quickly. So that puts you off balance itself. Now, the new players, they may hit a wall with this boss as well. The lava that you might not be prepared for, and honestly it's something you haven't seen up until this point. You're trying to dodge that, and you're also trying to dodge her sword and the spider. It's a lot for a new player to take in. But honestly, once you get that down, you can kind of chip away at her health. It's just the lava that she spews out and her sword that has such a wide arc when she swings can be pretty devastating. So with that being said, I'm going to place Quelaag in the B tier. Next on the list is the Stray Demon, a surprising boss fight for when you're returning to the Asylum. He can hit hard with some magic bursts after his attacks that have a very wide AoE that can catch you off guard. You start the fight by falling into the arena, so you're already starting it damaged, unless you have a spell to mitigate fall damage in fall control. But unless you're really knowing that the boss is there, you might not use it. Now, he's fairly tanky. He takes less damage from strike and thrusting weapons, so if you're using those, you're not going to be doing nearly as much damage as you would like. And his health bar is fairly big, and he just will absorb a lot of damage. Now, the arena itself, like I said, you start off by falling into it, so you're going to be starting off damaged. But the arena is actually fairly big for what it is anyways, and it'll give you some room to roll and kind of create a little bit of space while you kind of resettle yourself at the start of the fight. New players may have a hard time with this if they're not aware of the fight beforehand. Like if they're just kind of wandering into the Asylum, they're going to fall and not realize what's happening. Now, they're going to probably land, panic roll, try to heal, and probably end up getting either one or two shot, not expecting what's going to happen. With saying this, I'm going to place the Stray Demon in the C tier, just based off the fact that, one, he's optional, and he can be pretty difficult depending on when you encounter him. Next on the list is the Iron Golem of Sen's Fortress. He's a fairly hard-hitting, tanky boss, and he has a surprise range attack where he swings his axe and sends a shockwave across the arena, so that would kind of keep any range players from creating too much space while they're trying to fight him. Now, the arena itself, it's two narrow bridges on either side of the top of a tower, I want to say, and that's pretty much it. There's a little bit of room for maneuverability because you can roll through the Iron Golem's legs if you need to create some space, But in the middle of that arena, if you haven't taken out the giant that's overlooking the whole thing, he's going to be lobbing in big fire bombs to kind of take out that portion of the arena. And it's something that you're going to have to watch for. So before you go into the boss fight, you're going to want to go in and take out the giant. But in saying that, new players may not know that. They may not realize that they have to go and do that, or that they should go and do that. As well as they might not find the cage key, and they might not find the bonfire at the top. So going into this boss fight, you might be depleted resources. So it's not that the boss himself is going to be extremely difficult. He still has a pretty high health bar. He deals out a fair amount of damage. But it's the area that comes before it in Sen's Fortress that can really deplete resources before you even get into it. In saying that, I'm going to put Iron Golem in the C tier, and he's going to be at the top of the C tier just because he can deal a lot of damage and he can absorb a lot of damage. Next, we have the second optional boss of the game in Crossbreed Priscilla. Now, this fight can actually be avoided altogether by just going into the boss room and walking right by her. She will not attack you until you attack her. Now, in saying that, when you do fight her, and a lot of people maybe not, but some people do just so they can get her weapon that drops from her tail. Now, she can cause some massive bleeding damage with her scythe if you're not prepared for it. And as well, she can turn invisible. So I think right at the start of the fight, as soon as you get one hit in on her, she causes a blizzard to come in and she goes completely invisible. Now, the arena is just like a, it's fairly big for what it is, and there's snow in the middle. You use that snow to track Crossbreed Priscilla. If you look at the snow while she's moving, you can see her footprints, and that will help you kind of find out exactly where she's at. It's not going to help you dodge any attacks, but if you do enough poise damage, you can knock her out of her invisibility. Now, new players, if they go into this fight and they don't know that she turns invisible, that could cause some issues, that could cause some people to panic. And two, don't know that they can look at the snow to track her feet, then they're going to have a hard time with this fight. The bleeding from her scythe is also going to be kind of hard to resist. There's a blood shield that you can find in the area just before this, and that will help mitigate some of that bleeding, but you're going to want to watch out for that. In saying that, I'm going to place her in the C tier as well. Next is everyone's favorite duo, is Ornstein and Smough. Now, this is the first boss with an actual second phase of the fight, where you deplete one of their health bars, and then you have to wait for a cutscene to play, and then you go into another phase. Now, they will punish people left, right, and center if you don't keep track of where both are. If you focus Ornstein and don't keep track of Smough, Smough will come in and absolutely demolish you with his hammer. It's the same as Smough. If you're tracking Smough and you kind of lose track of Ornstein, Ornstein will charge you with his spear and hit you with lightning. They are a very punishing duo. The arena itself is fully destructible. The pillars get knocked down when Smough hits them with his hammer, and it makes for an absolute amazing environment, an amazing area to look at after the fight, because it just looks like you've been in a war with these two, and it really looks really cool at the end of it all. For new players, this is a massive wall, and I mean a massive wall. A lot of people get to this point and they're stuck on Ornstein and Smough for a long time, just because they don't know how to properly keep them both in frame and how to focus one without having to try and focus on the other. Because that's how you take these two down, is focus one, then take the other one out in the second phase, because they get powered up depending on which one you take out first. Now, with that being said, this is going to be our first S tier boss, just because this is such a famous fight within this game, and they can be an extremely difficult duo to get past.
Next on our list is the Dark Sun Gwyndolin. He's another optional boss fight in this game, mostly because he's kind of hidden within Anor Londo. Unless you know how to find him, you would probably miss him on your first playthrough. Now, the way that you want to activate him is you kill Guinevere after the fight with Ornstein and Smough. It'll plunge Anor Londo into darkness, and then you can go activate the boss fight. That's like the normal way to do it. Unless you enter his covenant, then you can go into the boss fight from there. But that's not what this list is about. It's just about the boss fight itself. So Gwyndolin, he can deal out some big magic damage as well as a little bit of physical damage in his arrows. Now, the whole gimmick of this fight is as the player gets close to him, he's going to teleport away, extending the hallway that you're in, and then you have to run towards him again, having to dodge his magic, having to dodge his arrows. Now, he does take a lot of damage when you actually are able to hit him. His health bar is not that big, but just getting to him is half the fight. Now, the arena itself is kind of half the fight. It's a pretty simple arena, to be honest. It's just a hallway with a couple of alcoves that you can dodge into in order to get away from his arrows and his magic missiles. However, his soul spear will go right through. So you're going to want to dodge out of those, which kind of keeps the player moving, especially if they want to get close to Gwyndolin himself. You're definitely going to keep moving. Now, for new players, it will be a little bit of a struggle if you're not ready for the magic damage, and if you aren't ready for him to be teleporting back further and further as you get closer to him. Then you might get caught off guard, and you're gonna get caught off balance when he starts firing his arrows and magic at you. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and put Gwyndolin in the B tier, mostly because half the gimmick is the hallway extending, which honestly gave me a little bit of trouble when I first started, and he can deal out some big magic damage, which if you're not ready for it, will take you out fairly quickly. Next up is the Moonlight Butterfly. Now, this boss can be extremely easy if you're using a ranged build. So if you're using miracles, or if you're using magic, or even pyromancies, you're going to have an easier time than someone who is using melee builds. Mostly just because the Moonlight Butterfly stays in the air a lot of the time during the fight, and he's firing off magic to the player as they're just along this kind of narrow bridge. Now, like I said, the arena, it's just a bridge. It's just a little bit of a bridge that just allows some side-to-side movement as well as some dodging there. The Moonlight Butterfly will come down for the melee builds to hit, but most of the time it's going to be in the air. Now, new players most of the time go for like a strength build, and they don't necessarily want to try the magic until they're more comfortable with the game. Players that do this are going to struggle with this fight, just because the Moonlight Butterfly does stay in the air for so long during the fight. And if you're not outputting a lot of damage, the Moonlight Butterfly will actually heal. Not a lot of people, I think, know this just because they take it out so quickly. But if you are taking your time with killing it and waiting it to come down and hit it that way, it's probably going to start healing. So new players may have some troubles with it. So I'm going to put the Moonlight Butterfly in the D tier, just because if you're using a range build, it's going to be extremely easy. If you're using a melee build, you'll still be able to take it out fairly easily. It might just take you a little bit more time. You might struggle with the magic, but overall, the boss is fairly easy to beat. Okay, this one is probably going to be argued in the comments, and I'm okay with that. Next up is Ceaseless. Now, Ceaseless is a very fast-moving boss. It can jump all around the map, and if you're not ready, then you probably will get taken out that way. However, once you learn that you can just kind of get underneath Ceaseless and attack it that way, the boss fight becomes extremely easy. and as you deal more damage to Ceaseless, it begins to slow down. So as you get it to like half health, it is extremely slow, and then near like probably a quarter or less, it's limping and can barely move. So it's going to break your heart as you kill it, but it will slow down, making it a lot easier for you. Now, the arena, you're going to have instant regret for walking into this arena, mostly just because you're going to figure out that Ceaseless is just protecting Artorias' grave because it's sitting right in the middle of the whole arena. Now, besides that, the arena itself is pretty wide open. You can have lots of room to move around, as Ceaseless also has lots of room to move around, and it kind of makes for a really good boss fight. Now, new players can come here fairly early in the game, actually. If you go past Andre, you can pretty much get right to Ceaseless pretty easily, actually. Like, getting to Ceaseless isn't that difficult. Now, if you do get to Ceaseless early, you might have a hard time just because of the high damage output that Ceaseless can put out and just how quickly it moves. So new players may struggle a bit here. Now, I'm going to rank Ceaseless in the D tier. I'm sorry, I'm not really going off of the emotional damage you're going to receive from this fight. It's just based on how hard the boss is. And honestly, this boss fight isn't that difficult. Next up is the first Lord Soul that you're going to obtain in your playthrough, and it's the Four Kings. Now, Four Kings, they can hit hard if you're trying to keep your distance. Their sword hits really hard. They can fire off some magic, and they have kind of a charging attack that if they grab you, they'll do a lot of damage. Plus, they kind of have a magic burst that will deal also a great amount of damage. Now, if you take too long killing one, because they do spawn in one at a time, if you take too long killing one, another will spawn, and then you're immediately going to start getting overwhelmed. So the best course of action is to obviously take one out at a time. The arena you fight in is a black hole. It's kind of the abyss, but it's not really the abyss. Now, you have to use a ring in order to actually fight here. So if your build is kind of depending on both ring slots at that moment, you're already going to get thrown off balance, just because you're going to have to adapt to losing one of your rings. Now, for new players, this fight is famous for being a DPS test. Are you able to take out one king before another spawns? If you are, then you are outputting enough damage to move on. If you're not, then you're going to have a very hard time. New players may not be ready for this fight, as their damage output might not be sufficient to take out a 4 king before another one spawns, and they're going to get stuck here for a little while. But in saying this, I'm going to rank the 4 kings in the A tier, because this fight is in a great location in my opinion, and it can be extremely easy, or it can be extremely difficult if you take too long killing them. The next boss on this list is another lord, and it is Ceaseless the Scaleless, another dragon boss. So Ceaseless, he is pretty slow moving. He can deal out a fair amount of physical damage with his tail, and he can deal out some curse with his crystal magic. He doesn't take a whole lot of damage from sorcery builds, so if you're running a sorcery build against Ceaseless, you're gonna have some problems. And if you aren't ready for a curse, that will kill you instantly and cut your health bar in half. Now, his arena is kind of just surrounded by crystal and down into this crystal cave. He's very much into the crystals. But the arena is a little bit small just because of how big Ceaseless is. It gives you a little bit of room for some movement, but once you're trying to dodge his crystal attacks, and if you get too close to him, he'll start swinging at it with his tails. then you're going to start running into problems there. So it can be a pretty hard fight, especially if you don't know that you can roll into the crystal at the front or back of the room, I guess. And that will kind of take away his immortality. A lot of players don't really know this, and I find new players will probably figure that out a little bit later on in the fight, unless he destroys it himself, which he can do. Now also, if players have heard about the Moonlight Greatsword and want it, I feel like they're going to focus a little bit too much on getting that, and Ceaseless will take them out fairly quickly. So I'm going to place Ceaseless in the B tier, mostly because he can deal out Curse, and his tail can actually deal out some decent damage if you're not ready for it. Next up is Ceaseless Discharge. This boss is honestly trivial if you know how to take him out. He can hit you fairly hard if you don't know that you just run back to the fog wall and get him to follow you. He leaps off a ledge and then he kind of grabs onto the pathway in front of you, and you just have to hit him a couple times and he falls off and he just instantly dies. Now, if you don't know to do that and you try to fight him straight up, he can be pretty difficult. He will deal a lot of damage. He swings in very wide arcs and he has a lot of fire that he will shoot out almost instantly at you. So he will take you out fairly quickly if you don't know how to take him out extremely easily, funny enough. Now the arena, it's not really a factor, but it is a factor if you make it one, if that makes any kind of sense, just because as soon as you grab the armor, you make a sprint for the fog wall, the fight is basically done. But if you don't do that, there is a big plateau that you can fight on just in front of the armor set. So that will give you a little bit of room to roll around and dodge his attacks. New players, I think, will struggle here, especially if they don't know that they can run back to the fog wall. And even if you fail the first time you try it, you can reset everything by entering the fog wall, running all the way to the end, and running back. A lot of new players may not know this, and they will struggle here and probably die a couple times to Ceaseless. I'm going to place Ceaseless in the E tier, mostly because this fight can be extremely trivial, especially if you know what to do. Next up is the Demon Firesage. I honestly don't have much to say about this boss, mostly just because it's a carbon copy of the Stray Demon, and the only difference is that it has an immunity to fire now, and the arena itself isn't really that good. It has some tree roots throughout it, and you can get caught on those, so you might have some difficulty there. If new players had problems with the Stray Demon, they might have a few problems with the Demon Firesage, so I'm going to place it in the D tier, but it's going to be below Stray Demon. Next up is the Centipede Demon, another fire-based boss, and honestly this fight isn't that hard. It's mostly the arena that gives the difficulty, and I'll get to that in a second. Centipede Demon, his attacks are pretty well telegraphed. They're fairly slow, so you can dodge them. The arena itself, that's what makes this fight difficult, because it's covered in lava. There's only a couple land masses in this arena that allows you to actually fight the Centipede Demon. Now, trying to get to one of the bigger spots, you do have to jump over some lava, and if you touch it, the lava will start melting your health bar very, very quickly. So just be wary of that. Now, the whole thing with this is that you can cut its arm off and it will drop a ring that mitigates all lava damage. It'll make this fight very trivial because the boss is actually fairly easy. New players might not know this, and if they don't know it, they'll fight this boss over and over, probably die a couple times, and then they get the ring after the fact. They don't know that they can cut the arm off and get the ring during the fight. But it kind of is what it is. Now, because of this, I'm going to put the Centipede Demon in the D tier, just because, one, it drops the item that allows you to fight it a little bit more evenly, and it's honestly just the arena that's going to give you some troubles. Okay, next up is the Bed of Chaos. This boss is a completely trivial fight. There is no actual boss fight here. All you do is go to either side of this great big tree monster and break orange orbs until you can get access to the middle, where you just kill a little bug, and that is the Bed of Chaos. So the arena, that is the boss fight itself. As you break an orange orb, it starts to slowly break some of the floor, which will cause you to drop and die instantly. Now, as you break the second orb, it gets a little bit more intense with some added fire, and then you have to run in the middle and kill the bug, and that will be the boss fight. It takes one hit to kill it. Now, new players, they will probably end up having some hard time with this because you don't really know what to do. They might try to fight the thing straight up, not realizing that they have to run to either side to break the orange orbs. I'm going to place the Bed of Chaos in the F tier. This isn't a boss fight. I don't know why they would make this fight the way it is, but this isn't a boss fight. It's a very, very trivial fight, because as soon as you break an orb, you can reset the area by saving, quitting, go up to the top, run over to the second one, and just do that until you win, basically. This is not a boss fight, so it belongs in the F tier. So the next one on our list is Pinwheel. This boss, like a few I've said in this tier list, is extremely easy. And I mean extremely easy. Its health bar is just above that of an average enemy, and honestly, the only trouble that you might have with this is the fact that he can multiply himself and he can fire some fireballs at you. But other than that, it's not a difficult fight. The arena itself is in a crypt, and it's kind of small, so it could give you a little bit of trouble with some dodging, especially if you're not just rushing Pinwheel at the start of the fight. New players honestly should not have a hard time with this boss. With its relatively low health bar and slow attacks, they're not going to have a hard time. The only thing that they might have a hard time is with the multiplying of itself, and if you let it go too far, you could get overwhelmed by them, but honestly, you're probably not going to. So I'm going to place Pinwheel at the top of the E tier, just because he can kill some people. I've seen new players get killed by Pinwheel, but honestly, he's not that difficult. Next up is the Lord of Death, Nito. Now, Nito himself, he's extremely slow moving, but that doesn't mean he's easy. He hits like a truck, and he has a long range attack that he plunges his sword into the ground, and it pops up right underneath you, causing some big toxic buildup if you're not ready. And also he has some skeletons in the arena with him that are infinitely reviving unless you have a blessed weapon. So you could get right up in Nito's face to fight him, but he also has a AoE attack that will melt your health bar fairly quickly if you're not ready for that also. The arena itself is kind of cool. It has like an eerie feeling to it because you're in like a grave site, I guess, where Nito's crypt is there and it's massive, and there's like a giant pillar in the middle where you can kind of kite the skeletons around while you're trying to focus Nito. Now, there's a little bit of room for movement. You can definitely dodge attacks if need be, so the arena isn't going to be fighting against you. New players are probably going to have a hard time with Nito at first. One, they're not ready for the infinite reviving skeletons. unless you have a blessed weapon, which are not pushed out there through the game. Unless you know how to make a blessed weapon, you're probably not going to have one at this point. Now, with Nito, they're probably also not going to be ready with the toxic build-up attack or the AoE. So new players are probably going to get overwhelmed by the skeletons and either get toxic by Nito or be taken out by his AoE attacks. So with that being said, I'm going to put Nito in the A tier because this can be a really difficult fight, especially if you're not ready for the skeletons and you're not ready for the toxic. Next up is the first of the DLC bosses in the Sanctuary Guardian. He's kind of a surprising boss fight right when you enter the DLC. You go through a cavern and you're thrown into this fight almost immediately. He is fairly quick with his attacks. He can lock you into a combo where he hits you probably 3 or 4 times, which deals a fair amount of damage. He also has ranged lightning attacks that honestly can hit you pretty hard. And if you try to get in behind him, his tail will also toxic you. So honestly, there's not really many safe spots to fight him, which makes him a little bit more difficult. The arena is pretty flat, but it is covered in water. What that means is when he fires out his lightning, when it hits the ground, it will kind of spread out and hurt the player. So the arena is going to be fighting against you here. There's plenty of room to roll around and dodge, so that will be going for you at least. New players may actually get walled at this boss because he does deal out a fair amount of damage with his combos and with his lightning attacks, as well as the possibility of getting toxic from the tail if you're not ready for that. With that being said, I'm going to place the Sanctuary Guardian in the B tier because overall he can be a fairly difficult boss. Next on our list is Knight Artorias. He is an extremely fast fighter with some heavy damage, and he can lock you into a combo that will take out your health bar almost instantly. He can definitely dodge a lot of range attacks, and he moves so quickly for as tanky as he can be. He also has a buffing phase where during it he won't take nearly as much damage, and then his damage output will be increased significantly. The arena that you fight Artorias in is pretty wide open, so you have plenty of room for dodging, and it takes place in a coliseum it's just an amazing setting for this fight. Now, new players, he is going to be a huge wall for new players, especially ones that try to take on the DLC just a little bit too early and maybe a bit under-leveled. They're going to have a hard time with Artorias. I still have a hard time with Artorias, and I would consider myself not a veteran of this game, but I have put a lot of hours into it. So honestly, I'm going to put Knight Artorias in the S tier as well. And honestly, I believe he deserves to be there. He is an extremely hard fight in an amazing setting that will really test new players. Next is the dragon Kalameet. Now, this boss can be extremely difficult. He has a couple of big physical attacks that he can kind of combo together, as well as some breath attacks that will fill a little bit of the arena, so you'd have to be careful dodging that. He also has a grab attack that when he gets you will add the effect of Calamity, and that will mean that you take double damage from him for a set time, which makes the fight just that much harder. The arena that you fight Kalameet in is at the bottom of a ravine basically, and it's in between 2 waterfalls, which kind of makes for a pretty decent scene for fighting, and it's a pretty wide open area where you have plenty of room to dodge. So honestly, the arena doesn't really add much to this fight. New players probably are going to have a hard time with Kalameet. One, he hits pretty hard, and he can fill the arena with his breath attacks fairly quickly. And 2, he honestly, you have to fight him once before you have to go back to get the giant to fire an arrow at him, bringing him down to the ground so he doesn't fly anymore. A lot of new players may not know this, so they're probably going to try and fight him when he can still fly, giving them a bit of a harder time. I'm going to put Kalameet in the B tier just because he can be pretty difficult, especially if you don't know that you can get the giant to shoot him out of the air. So now comes the final boss of the DLC, Manus. Now, Manus, he hits incredibly hard with some high damage combos, and he also has some spells that he can fire off at you when he gets to half health that will also deal some massive damage. He moves around fairly quickly for something that's so big, which will throw you off guard almost immediately. The arena that you fight him in is the Abyss. Now, this is really the Abyss, and it makes for a wicked boss fight. It just looks really good. It really kind of pulls everything together in the DLC and just makes for an amazing environment. Now, new players who are not ready for this fight will go in very unprepared, and they will get absolutely demolished by him if they're not ready. His attacks deal out so much damage, and you can get caught in a lot of his combos if you're not ready. Even some of the more experienced players still have a hard time with Manus. Even if they know when the attacks are coming and like what attacks he's doing, he can still catch some people off guard. So with that being said, I am going to put Manus in the S tier as well. I think it's pretty deserving. He is a very hard boss fight, and it just pulls the DLC together. And finally, we have Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder, the final boss of Dark Souls 1. He honestly has some very quick movements. He has some high fire damage, and he also has a grab that will definitely deal a high amount of damage, paired with also a kick that will pretty much take out your block. Now, the arena, it's the final arena of the game. It's covered in ash, and it makes for another fantastic scene when you're fighting them. There's plenty of room to move around. You can even get them stuck on some pillars, and you can kind of use it to your advantage. Now, this fight can be easy, but it also can be very hard. If you've learned to parry throughout the game, this fight is going to be trivial. Gwyn can be parried with almost every attack he does, and that makes this fight extremely easy. If you have not learned to parry, which some people, they just can't get it, that's fine. You're going to have a hard time with Gwyn, because he does deal out a lot of damage. Now, I am going to put Gwyn in the A tier. Mostly because if you don't know how to parry, he hits hard, the arena looks fantastic, you have lots of room to move in. He's an A tier boss, I think. He does a lot of damage. Unless you know how to parry, then he'll be trivial. But if you don't, then he's going to be fairly hard. Well, that pretty much does it for me today, guys. I'm sorry this video went on for as long as it did. I wasn't really expecting it to be this long of a video. I honestly had a lot of fun making this list, and I hope that everyone not agrees with what I say, but just sees my reasoning with it. If you guys in the comments want to argue any of these points, I am more than happy to read them. I'm more than happy to reply to them. I just wanted to put out a tier list of my own opinion based on my own experiences with these bosses and what I feel that new players may experience with these bosses as well. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I put a ton of work into it, and I really hope you guys liked it. Alright, have a great day. Bye-bye.